I'm going to firstly ask Bristol's Mayor, Marvin Rees, to deliver his statement. After full council has received the Mayor's statement, I will then ask each political group leader to respond. Following that, I will ask the Mayor to make a final summing up response. Just to be clear, there will be no voting on this item. Council is asked to receive and note the response statements. Firstly, then, I will ask Bristol's Mayor, Marvin Rees, to make his annual statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So I'll focus this report on the progress we've made, safeguarding our services, delivering the investment and fostering the leadership Bristol needs to be successful. So I'd start by saying it's not easy. From austerity to the rollout of universal credit, the inherited council deficit, Brexit, the migration crisis, climate emergency, government's hostile environment, racism, the resurgence of the right, deterioration of the quality of our civic debate through social media and the single-issue politics it encourages, and the government that has disappeared into itself. These are the challenges we face. But whatever's said here tonight, and a lot has been said and much more will be said, I'm sure, the simple truth is that we've pulled together a great group of people who've worked incredibly hard to get good things done for Bristol in the face of extraordinary challenges, and they've delivered. So I want to thank officers and city partners for their role in helping us change the council's culture to focus and enable delivery. As the LGA said, it was clear that the organisation has come a very long way on their journey of improvement. So I want to thank my Cabinet and my colleagues for all they've done. So let's go through some of the flagship areas by Cabinet portfolio. Housing. We remain on track to hit the 2020 target of 2,000 homes a year, at least 800 affordable. We broke ground at Ashton Rise, completed Whitehall Road, won industry awards for 3 developments in Henbury. Elderbury Walk in Southmead was listed by the World Economic Forum among their 10 examples of cities delivering on affordable housing. We launched a housing company, Gorham Homes. The Bristol Housing Festival has just won permission for the Z-Pod scheme and the car park in St George. We opened St Anne's Night Shelter, 24 hours, and we've extended the HMO licensing into 12 more wards to improve standards in the private rental sector. In planning, the urban living document was agreed, guaranteeing the future of our developments and communities. We launched the Bedminster Green Framework, bringing together multiple landowners under an agreed set of development principles. And Nicola also led the Bristol at Night Advisory Panel on the nighttime economy, a key component of Bristol's wider economy. Women, children and young people, Helen Godwin leading there, is tackling period poverty and setting out steps for Bristol to become a period-friendly city, including a Bristol Standard PSHE and a distribution donation network. She's led children's services through the Strengthening Families programme, including a £4 million investment in new children's home. Bristol City Council was among only 12% of councils to balance their children's services budget in 2018. And she's led a fantastic campaign to recruit foster families for Bristol children. Education and skills. Anna's secured sites for new secondary schools. The first of these opens in Lotley's with a cohort this September, with a future 2 planned over the coming 4 years. Our work experience programme, The Works, has been giving children access to meaningful experiences. Between April 18 and March 19, 3,487 experiences of work were given to our children and young people. And Anna's also taken on the issue of SEND. Truth is, we inherited a broken service, but she's acknowledged that, and that the city must do better for these children and their families. And following a commitment of extra funds to the service, she announced an independent review to be carried out with the most urgency. Adult social care in Holland's hands is a huge responsibility. But as part of the Better Lives programme, we've increased home care, providing the home care provider hourly rate, reduced spend on intensive forms of care such as residential, enabling people to live independently for longer. Bristol joined the World Health Organization network of age-friendly communities, thanks to the Bristol Age and Better partnership, showing commitment and achievement in enabling older people to feel safe, enjoy good health and participate in society. And in waste commercialisation and regulation, Steve, put an extra £1 million into our Clean Streets campaign, purchasing smart compacting bins, supplying litter equipment to community groups, purchasing a cherry picker even to help with the removal of graffiti. And he'll also lead the planning application submission on the long-awaited Hartcliffe Way Reuse and Recycling Centre. He's also increased fines for fly tipping to send a clear message to the city. In communities, Asher has been very busy as ever, securing a £1 million investment for the parks and green spaces, driving our community toilet scheme, maintaining our libraries, even extending opening hours, launching Stepping Up, to tackle underrepresentation in city leadership. And that programme was last year named the Inclusion and Diversity the best Inclusion and Diversity programme at the Public Sector Association Awards. And Bristol's become a Time to Change hub also. Still, she found time to go to St Paul's Carnival and to go to Newport to help one of our bright young people stay in this country while the government tried to deport him. In transport, we're dealing with a 40-year failure to plan and invest in a coherent way, and we're putting that right. We opened Scotland Lane after flood prevention works. We're working on Redcliffe Bridge and the Chocolate Path. We're improving cycling infrastructure across the city. We're taking Metro West forward, bringing our suburban rail and new stations forward, including winning finance for the Portishead line. We've completed a 20-mile-per-hour review. We've adopted a transport strategy. We've completed the first feasibility study on the mass transit system. The second will be out in the autumn. And we're unrolling the ring of park and rides around the city that will help us bring about bus prioritisation, the bus deal, and 100% biogas buses and a doubling of the frequency. And in finance, we know this story. Deputy Mayor Craig Cheney took over in an appalling situation. In the last few years, he's brought 60 cabinet reports alone last year, overseeing contracts for software, phone and printing services, all those things that keep this authority moving. He's protected the council tax reduction scheme, invested in the city funds and the Bristol Credit Union, and we became a living wage employer, and then subsequently wrote to 160 employers in Bristol, encouraging them to win accreditation so that we can become the first city in England to become a living wage city. Competent management of our property portfolio, such as the Engine Shed and Hawkfield Business Park and Colston Hall, has won investment from other sources. And we've taken down the post office sorting site, a 26-year eyesore. That is progress. The cranes we now see on the City High Line convey the ambition, energy and delivery we brought to the city. And more widely on city leadership, we are gaining a national and international reputation for delivery and for impact. At the LGA this year, the motion we took saw the LGA adopt the United Nations Global Sustainable Development Goals and declare a climate emergency. We're one of 10 cities on the Mayor's Migration Council. We've ensured that global conversation around migration takes place lockstep with C40 and a global conversation on climate change and climate emergency. We hosted the Global Parliament of Mayors and convened the first ever joint meeting of the Metro Mayors and core cities, where we rallied around shared objectives, including getting more support from government to support us in our infrastructure so we can plan longer term. And one of the most significant interventions I believe could be for us is the launch of the Great Western Gateway, aka Powerhouse. This puts us on the map. When I was at DIT just recently, they pulled a map up on the table on the wall. It had the Northern Powerhouse, the Midlands Engine, and nothing else. We didn't exist on that map. We do now. And I was just looking for a very nice letter I had from Liam Fox, of all people. Never thought I'd quote him, congratulating us for the international work we've done and for being a champion for Bristol business overseas in our recent trade trip. We're also the new home for Channel 4. We hosted them here on Friday. They'll be opening their offices in October. Not only bringing a huge economic boost to our creative sector, but also joining with us as a partner in bringing greater diversity to that sector. And we've also launched the One City Plan. The door's open. You've got ideas, email the boards, get involved. Many of them are statutory boards. Some of you probably even knew about them before because they've been around for some time, even though you seem not to. But you can absolutely welcome to reach out to any of those boards and share your ideas and your input as you like to as you feel to. So we came into office with a commitment to delivery, and I believe that's what we've done. That's what we're seeing. That's why we're attracting the support of government, investors. It's why you see cranes on the horizon. We committed to Bristol being a city that was inclusive and sustainable. These characteristics are writ large in what we've delivered in our corporate strategy and the One City Plan. And finally, I'd say every year we make the same offer. if you want to get stuff done, if you're prepared to put aside, the ping pong of chamber politics, and you want to come and say what you actually want to get done for Bristol, and you can tell me what you need from me to help you do it, let me know. I'm all ears. We'll work with you, and we have included people in those pieces of work sometimes until things begin to disintegrate. We want to hear from you. But if you want to play headline chasing, bite my ankles, talk the city down, and spend time searching for small problems with big plans, then I'm afraid I have to leave you to it. There's too much going on for us to get tied up in that. But whatever your conclusion on where you want to stand, we're going to continue committed to our promises for Bristol, and we're going to continue delivering for Bristol. Thank you.
Thank you. I would ask Councillor Hickman to respond as leader of the Labour group. Sorry.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Marvin, both for your inspiring speech on the radical actions we're taking to address the climate emergency and for another brilliant annual address. I want to thank you for the national leadership which you've shown on issues facing Bristol and beyond. Particularly just 2 weeks ago, getting almost 450 local councils from across the UK to follow our lead, declare a climate emergency and commit to aligning with sustainable development goals. Proof once again that Labour in local government are delivering, particularly in Bristol. But I also want to say something about the national backdrop we face. Continued Tory austerity and Boris facing off against Jeremy. Now, a few Tories have spoken about their concerns around blue-on-blue attacks, but here in Bristol, this isn't a concern. And I'm not just talking about Richard's letters to the Post about the Prime Minister, though the Tory party office must spend most of its budget on stamps. This is about a local Tory advert which saw them make a series of claims about our council. They were wrong on Bristol libraries. Labour is the only party to have voted to fund them. And they were wrong on Bristol's recycling rate. We're the best core city in the country at recycling, and Labour is delivering the Hartcliffe Centre, which other mayors and parties have left behind. But to give them some credit, 1 out of 6 claims by the Tories was actually accurate. It reads, shock report, bungling council mismanagement leads to a 29 million cock-up. And this is the advertisement that was in the paper just before the local elections this year. Even with Craig not being here today, I can still feel his ears pricking up. But before anyone texts him about my meltdown in this continuing heatwave, I should say that the Tories did helpfully reference this claim from the Bristol Post. It was in February 2017. Hang on, I think that the Tories may have missed something. The shock report into the 29 million cock-up covers the period before Labour took control. This shock report was, you might remember, authored by the former head of Audit Commission. He detailed a rudderless council on the edge, going bust, facing the same fate as Northamptonshire, who this year could not even afford to hold their elections. And who was in charge during this mismanagement, this cock-up described by Bristol Tory Association? Only Tory councillor Jeff Kolob, George Ferguson's cabinet member for finance. Blue on blue indeed. Now, I could talk for days about what our Labour administration have got done for Bristol, but with an already lengthy meeting and with even the official opposition campaigning to show just how much Labour have turned around the council, I'm not sure that there's anything more to add. Marvin, comrades, let's keep delivering for Bristol.
Thank you. I would like to ask Councillor Weston to respond on behalf of the Labour group. Sorry, the Conservative group. So sorry. I apologise.
I can guarantee you, my Lord Mayor, that would get a headline.
I've got a membership form for you.
I think colleagues will appreciate that although hot, I don't intend to emulate some of the protesters earlier. The shirt will stay on to the eternal relief of my deputy. But God help you if I hear any Tom Jones. Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor, and to the Mayor. It was an impressive sounding list. Some of it, if we're honest, though, you inherited. Some you borrowed. Hell, some of it I even support. But actually, the problem is, most of it the residents aren't even noticing. To have leadership, you need to take people with you. Otherwise, you're just going for a walk. And actually, I don't think the city is following you on a lot of this. They're certainly not feeling it in the suburbs. To lead is to choose. And I'm sorry, we hear this again and again. Living within your means is not a choice. I don't see why you choose not to accept this fact. I suppose failure not to live within your means is also a choice, but it's pretty irresponsible one. It's just spending more money, borrowing more cash, just handing the bill to your kids. So actually, I'm sorry, living within your means is a choice we all have to make, whether families, countries or cities. Now, the Mayor is the elected leader of this city, and he has choices. He may be constrained by finances, but he still has those choices. He chooses to spend more money on his mayoral office. He chooses to spend more money on his cabinet. He chooses to spend more on the comms team. These are choices. He chooses to pour millions into the energy company. Again, choices. He also, by contrast, chooses to close toilets or cut parks budgets, to threaten the libraries, which you've now U-turned and saved. He is choosing how to introduce parking charges at Blaze. These are all choices. Well, over the last 12 months, I've come to a conclusion. I've made a choice. I've concluded that it's time for Bristol to have a choice on whether to carry on with the mayoral system to begin with. I believe that this system does not give democratic leadership. I believe it gives elected autocracy. And I don't believe that we should be continuing with it anymore. And I do not say this lightly. As you may remember, I campaigned for the system. But actually, after 7 years, I was wrong to do so. This is not helping Bristol. I have seen in the last 12 months, we've had the gerrymandering of the Constitution. We've seen that, so that it limits the scrutiny. We've seen the debacle over chief executive pay and all of the rest. We're going to discuss that later. Again, a choice, I might add. We've seen the debacle over the arena and the choice there to go from the city centre, put it out on the outskirts of the city. A choice made against the express wishes of the majority of this chamber and the majority of citizens. Now, if this, it was against the majority of this chamber, I'm going to repeat this, if that model had been made under the cabinet and leader system, then, colleagues, I suspect you'd have made a choice too. Because I don't think a leader of a cabinet would have remained in office either after the arena or after the chief executive payout. I don't believe that at all. There were checks and balances in that system. There are none in this system at all. The Prime Minister position has more checks and balances than we have here in Bristol. And I think it is time that we as a city made a choice, and it's a choice to change our entire structure of government, because at the moment it is not democratically accountable. And I'm sorry, I do not support it, and I think that we should bring in our motion as soon as possible, hopefully cross-party, and I hope that we can actually change the system that runs this city so that it better reflects the will of the people, because I do not believe we're getting the leadership that we deserve, and that's a choice the city should make. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you. I would like to ask Councillor Comley to respond as a leader of the Green Group.
So, here we are, another year gone by and another chance to reflect on what's been achieved. I started by having a look back at what we said a year ago. Never look back. A year ago, I was concerned at the gaps between what the Mayor says and what actually happens. I have to be honest, a year on, that mood hasn't really lifted. The Mayor talks about delivering, but we're not seeing the evidence to back up the skip bin. On clean air, almost 1,000 days after the Green Clean Air motion was supported by you in this chamber, we now have a consultation open on possible courses of action. But remember that 2.5 years means, at a conservative estimate, 750 avoidable deaths. And why, after all these years, are we scurrying out to consultation with plans that we don't have the information on? In early 2018, we got evidence that a medium-sized charging zone would achieve legal air quality across all monitoring sites before 2021. We could have been halfway there by now. Instead, we have no progress and 2 new options which we are asking people to comment on without any information about when, if ever, they would have an impact on the quality of the air we breathe. On governance, the Mayor has said, when I was elected, I promised to bring transparency to the Council. But 3 years after that election, and 2 after the much-cited Bundred report, we have an administration that refuses to release key evidence and advice unless it is forced, treating secrecy as the default over senior officer recruitment and pay, over air quality decision-making, over the cuts to special educational needs funding. Far from benefiting from lessons learned, now we are watching the administration enter into a contrived arrangement with L&G over Arena Island to enable them to hand over valuable public land without the safeguards of any kind of process of scrutiny or procurement. And while we're on the subject of that island, I seem to recall the Mayor saying that this administration would not look kindly on developers with a bad record of providing affordable housing when it comes to finding partners to develop our own land. Why then would he choose L&G as a partner to develop our land at Temple Island and provide additional subsidies and a guaranteed return at the Council's own risk, when they had literally just taken the Council to court to wriggle out of the affordable housing asked of them by the Planning Committee on their other Temple Quarter site? We have a Mayor elected on a manifesto which stated we will not overpromise and underdeliver. But time and time again we see a failure to live up to the promises made. The 55% target for recycling is not significantly closer than it was when the Mayor took office. The Mayor's Clean Streets campaign seems to have left our streets no cleaner. New housing starts are still, although on track, apparently, are still bobbling around at less than half the 2000-year target, and affordable housing numbers have yet to climb back up to 2014 levels. Congestion still cripples the city, delaying our buses, scaring off potential cyclists and pedestrians, and leaving the average driver spending 149 hours in traffic each year. So we need more than words, but I will say that the Mayor's words recognising the climate emergency are welcome. As campaigners such as Extinction Rebellion have pointed out, telling the truth is the vital first step. But the next vital step is action. And as the Mayor himself has said, values are what you do. Pushing for divestment of the Council's own pension funds would be one small, low-cost action with the enormous impact of moving funds out of fossil fuel exploration.
You have 30 seconds left.
And into the green economy. Yet here we are again, after 4 years of asking, having to press for it again. I'm going to ask you to imagine for a moment a mayor and a city that truly commits to dealing with the climate emergency, that takes real and urgent steps to improve quality of life for all our residents, that isn't afraid to address environmental injustice, such as the impact of air pollution on the poorest. It is not too late.
Can I ask you to bring it to a close now, please?
With you for the rest of your term, just as we have freely and enthusiastically shared our ideas, some of which made it into your climate emergency response report today. But unfortunately, we've learned from experience that we cannot just take you at your word. We need to see action.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Councillor Hopkins to respond on behalf of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just to add to the points there with regard to the housing, the numbers in reality are actually around about 50% what they were before we got the first mayor. Not we're on target. I remember when the last mayor was standing for re-election and his supporters said, well, at least he's built an arena. Well, you know, I see no arena. And we also have today a statement from a Labour councillor saying, thank goodness we've got the mayor. We've actually now got the recycling centre in South Bristol. Well, the money for that was put aside quite some years ago. It's delay in terms of delivering that. And all that's actually happened is we're moving towards a business plan. That's not exactly spades in the ground, is it? Now, Mark, I welcome a sinner repented. There is more joy in heaven for somebody who is repenting their sins. But what you actually missed out was, although I know that your conversion is genuine, I do not hear that your party has converted. And is your party... Well, that isn't what you said on a Sunday politics show. But of course, the Labour MPs are very much in agreement that it was a serious mistake to get a mayor, and are saying so on the politics show as well. What you also didn't actually mention, and neither did the Green Party, is that we think that this getting democracy back into Bristol is so important. We were prepared to put aside completely party advantage and party one-upmanship. And we actually spoke to both the Conservatives and the Green Party about having a non-party candidate to stand on the basis purely of getting rid of the mayor. We were told by one we're not allowed to do that, and told by the other, well, we consider it, but we're not going for it. And bluntly, now there is a choice in the next election, next year. You could vote for 4 more years of Newspeak, of 1984 again, of, you know, more tractor production, which nobody out there actually believes, or you can actually decide for this city to go back to democracy by voting for a candidate who says they will put everything into making certain that they get rid of the position of mayor if elected. Back me and sack me. That's what people are going to vote for in this city, and it's a straight choice. And do not get diverted by other arguments, because that is what counts in this city. We've had the illustrations of why everything is wrong. We've saved the libraries. No, you tried to close them, more than half of them, and you were prevented from doing it because of the effort in this council chamber, because of public anger. £27 million disappeared down the drain in the energy company. Good grief! Well, I think you missed that out of your list. And in terms of public transport, we had GBBN before, the Greater Bristol Bus Network, and that was worked on by cross-party previously, extremely successful. It's now producing dividends. Metrobus, which was derided by you and by others, is now actually producing great results, despite being held up by the previous mayor and the administration now in terms of delivery. When the first mayor came to power, that was due to open in 2015 and was on target to do so, and it was on budget to do so. It's all gone wrong since. So it's not just entirely Marvin who's the problem, it's the system that's wrong, where all the power is sat at the top of one ivory tower. And I know there's lots of people on those benches over there who completely agree with that position as well. What will they be allowed to say in next year's election? Will
you
they
have
be
30
allowed
seconds.
to say, vote for me, but I don't believe in having a mayor? Because I know that applies to a lot of people across there, and it now applies to the vast majority of people on this side of the House. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now ask the Mayor to make a final response or concluding statement. You have 5 minutes. Thank you. Would you like 2 minutes?
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I understand there are criticism about the mayor position, and there is criticism about how much mayor has achieved in his position. But despite all this criticism, I have to say that I did supported mayor system. I might have reservation now in some ways or in some issues, but I think mayor personally has done pretty well. So I have to say this. He has done well after decades of under-delivery, after decades of under-planning. He has done well in housing, done well in transport. Well, at least he is trying. It doesn't happen in 1 week or 1 month, as he clearly stated in his statement that 40 years of neglect and 40 years of bickering doesn't help. So I suppose there are a lot of criticism. I don't want to go on to it, but I suppose in general, he has done well. And we as a city and as I think cross-party should commend that and thank him for the work he is doing. So I will finish by saying that thank you, Marvin. I know you're trying from heart, and that's what matters. So continue that, and we shall see what's happening.
Thank you. I would like to ask Marvin Rees to respond.
Yeah, lots going on there in those talks. One is, I'm always wary of when people describe themselves as the people or they know what people think, because I'm sure there are streets in the city I could walk along that members in the chamber, unless they are actually active there, probably have very little to do with. So to make any suggestion that someone talks on behalf of Bristol is quite a rich thing. I don't do so myself. I am the elected mayor, but I don't claim to have an insight into everyone's lives and what they think and what they view of people in this chamber. I think that needs to be looking at. It's a little bit of a challenge, to be honest, to hear you kind of defending austerity, talk about living in our means. Austerity has been a disinvestment in the lives of people in this country, a disinvestment in the infrastructure and the houses and the homes that we need for people, a disinvestment that will cost us money, whether it be us scrabbling around last summer to just trying to find £20,000 to do proactive work to prevent knife crime, or whether it be the wicked choices we face between early intervention in children's mental health and the immediate crisis of our service delivery today. It would strike me as being slightly more authentic to kind of take some ownership of that and direct some of that blue firepower to national government as well, to make sure that you champion the city, not just champion the Bristol party. The argument around the democracy of the mayor system is an interesting one. I think in some sense it does remind him of a kind of a Brexit argument, in that what we do is we look around, we try and find some disillusionment, and then we blame a political structure. And we try and get people to express their frustration and buy into that culture we've got at the moment where everyone wants to express anger, everyone wants to blame someone, and we try and stitch that into a political movement. But one is, you've got to talk about what's the alternative model of leadership. Is it, and what is this? Where was this age when Bristol purred along delivering? Channel 4 would not be here without a mayoral system. I have that on reasonably good authority because I talked to them. And the way we led the bid, the decisions I'm happy for people to stand by the arena, right? The city centre arena. But you have to put some numbers against it. You have to put some financial numbers against it because it does not stand up. And when we came into power, it's also worth bearing, there were no plans. And people on those benches were in the cabinet at that time. We came in, there was nothing except a £30 million hole in the budget. But let me just share a couple of things with you, also. In terms of democracy, Bristol gets a direct opportunity to vote for me or not vote for me, or whoever the mayor is, right? When something doesn't happen, they can point at you. They can haul you onto radio, pull you onto TV. Lib Dems, you've just changed your leader again, right? I didn't even know. Who knew? That's 3 leadership changes you've had. And how many people were in the room when you changed the leader of your party? I look back over the votes of people, of the leadership beforehand. When I looked, 2011, I think there were 33 people in the room choosing the leader of the council. 2010, 38 in the room, if you were all there. 2009, 36 in the room, if you were all there. You know, I mean, to hold that up as a democratic way of choosing the political leader of the, well, actually, and it's a question about whether it's leader of the city, is a real, well, you could ask questions about that too, but it's not clean. You may have questions with the mayoral system, but please have some authenticity and recognise that when you choose the political leader of the council by a small group of people going to a room and making a decision amongst themselves, people who bounce around in here, many of whom will not even be known by the general public, that there's some difficulty in that. And just engaging with that difficulty would struck me as being strictly authentic, a bit more authentic. Let me just share one last thing with you, because I was dismayed two cabinet meetings ago, and it talks about the quality of politics in this chamber. 2 council meetings ago, what are we chasing, right? We had a number of items on the agenda. I'll do this in a minute, right? Clean air update. 10 questions from councillors and 2 statements from councillors. Clean air's in the news at the moment, right? So you'd expect there to be some interest. Transport capital programme. 2 questions from councillors, no statements. Strategic assets management, no questions, no statements. A4018, no questions, 1 joint statement from councillors. Tree management, 1 question, 2 statements. Then the chamber emptied. The councillors left, except for 2, Clive Stevens and Don. Right? Keeping Bristol Safe Partnership, safeguarding for children. No councillor questions, no councillor statements. Adult carer support services, no questions, no statements. Better Lives programme, no statements, no questions. Children's homes, no questions, 2 statements. Council tax reduction scheme, 2 questions, no statements. I mean, the image of people walking out the door once the headlines disappeared, as we got into the services that work with some of the most, by definition, the poorest and most vulnerable people in the city, was an embarrassment. And actually, we need to up the quality of the political debate. And mudslinging about the mayoral system does nothing to do with what this chamber does to defend the rights and the interests of the poorest people in the city.
Thank you very much. As indicated earlier,
Lord Mayor, do we get a
Council
chance
is
to come
asked
back
to
on
receive
that?
and note these statements.
Any chance to come back on that?
No.
Well, that's outrageous.
That concludes agenda item 10. Agenda item 11, update on External Auditor recommendations relating to senior executive remuneration. I would like to move the report. So, Councillor Brain, are you speaking on this?
Yes, Lord Mayor, I am.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Mike Jackson for the report. I would like to pay tribute to councillors from all parties who've dug into this issue, made discoveries, and have done the council great service by doing so. The BDO recommendations have now been implemented, and to me it's a piece of work well done. Much better if we hadn't had to do the work in the first place, of course. The issue has occupied a large amount of audit committee time for the last year, which to the detriment of other issues, that has to be said. It came to full council on March the 19th. It went back to the audit committee again on March the 26th. Then it went to the HR committee on May the 9th, and now it's back here again. I think we've probably done this one now. I don't think we're going to dig out any more truth because I don't think there's any more to get. There are some emails flying around. There's nothing on the agenda here, but we know there are emails flying around about an investigation into value for money. I think I can save the council some time and money here. I don't think there's anybody in this chamber who thinks the Severage package was value for money. If I'm wrong, can whoever thinks it was good value for money please make themselves known to me. If this entire chamber is of the view that it wasn't good value for money, then I think we can skip the investigation and move on to the agenda items that the Audit Committee should be looking at, and have ourselves a bit of a break. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would like to ask Councillor Eddy to speak on behalf of the Conservative Party.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. As a successful mover of the March Council amendment requiring that the BDO findings go to the Audit and HR Committee, I have to say I am disappointed with the quality of the report before us today. When the Audit Committee considered the BDO report, shamefully it was shunted to the back of an extensive agenda, and appallingly most Labour councillors left before the substantive debate ensued. Consideration by the HR Committee was even more haphazard. The Chairman ruled that we should not resolve a final committee position, and individual members were encouraged to convey their views. These views were summarised by the Director of Legal Services, who was present, and subsequently conveyed verbally to the Executive Director of Resources. I do not believe that the account presented in the report today goes anywhere near the correct deliberations of this committee. I was hoping that the BDO findings would influence us to review our practices and procedures, and crucially lead to an improvement in the culture of this organisation. By denying that there is a fundamental problem, I believe Bristol City Council risks repeating similar problems as unearthed in the Anna Case scandal. In March's full council debate, two senior councillors, Councillor Helen Holland and Councillor Mark Brain, were honest enough to admit there had been major failings unearthed, and said they wanted to ensure that never again did Bristol City Council repeat this mistake. I sincerely wish that the Mayor could be so honest. His standard line is to deny there is a problem, or to claim that his decisions were poorly advised and misinterpreted.
You have 20 seconds left.
For the reasons I've outlined, Lord Mayor, members on this side will be voting against.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Councillor O'Rourke to speak on behalf of the Greens.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Well, personally, I feel that this investigation has gone as far as it's ever going to go, and resignedly, I stand here today to accept the report and to note it, which is what we're here to do. I agree with Mark that it would have been better never to have done this. I don't really agree that it was well done. I think it was a really long slog to get to the truth. I think also, not everybody really agrees that we really have got to a full stop, because, again, even at the very end, there was uncertainty and a bit of a sort of a mishmash about what's exactly happening as to whether it's going to go to audit or not. But I accept that, as far as I'm concerned, I really feel that, we've done the job that I certainly wanted to do, in the sense that, I asked a whole lot of questions and we kept probing. A long time we kept getting the same answer. We acted within the contract, but in the end we found out that there was a discretionary payment. We also found out that systems in the HR department, due to sort of terms of references not being terms of references not being lined up, that a decision was able to slip through. And I think we also found out that there were inadequacies in the systems in the legal department. And I am very confident now that both of those have been remedied. So I think that that's a really important thing to be able to do. And as a member, That's what I want to be able to do. I'm supposed to be able to hold the administration to account for the city. And I do feel confident that those mistakes cannot happen again. I do think it is unfortunate that we have to build in so much rigour into our systems so that, opportunism, in a sense that political expediency cannot be allowed to trump democracy and doing the right thing. So I think that we've put enough systems in place to ensure that won't happen again. So I'm frustrated that the report perhaps wasn't as forensic as it could have been. We started again. I would have liked a full documentary forensic review. But even at that, I don't think we would have really found out exactly who or what the agents who made these decisions were thinking, because these decisions were made, with sort of verbal agreements in rooms, and the people who made those decisions, they're not here, apart from the mayor. We've not been able to question the mayor about it. I think we've got as far as we're going to go. So let's just draw a line under this and move on.
Thank you. I would like to ask Councillor Hopkins to speak on behalf of Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This was a disaster waiting to happen right from the beginning, as several of us actually prophesied right at the recruitment of this officer. The sudden disappearance, the unbelievable story about why this actually happened. And then, after we started asking questions, somebody in senior management leaked stuff to Private Eye, which made it even worse. And we found out about the money that had been paid out to keep things quiet. No criticism of our auditors. They did what they could, and actually they stuck by their guns and refused to sign off false accounting, which is absolutely right. What they didn't do, though, was a forensic audit, because they weren't asked to do it. They weren't able to do the interviews, etc. They weren't required to do that. And by the time they got round to investigating some of the stuff, the shredding machines had been busy, and a lot of the emails had disappeared. So who recruited these outside solicitors who apparently gave advice that we wanted to hear? There is possibility, although there seems to be little chance of proving it now, significant possibility that there was behaviour that could have been criminal in this. And that is really very, very concerning. We don't have the proof one way or the other, but there is serious concern. And while that is still there, I know this council will not investigate further, but it should do. And it should find out exactly who sent what email, who recruited so-and-so, and who gave the information to those outside solicitors that allowed them to come up with the erroneous advice. So it's an episode that we should all be ashamed of. And as was said, credit to the couple of Labour councillors, senior Labour councillors, who admitted that there were serious problems. But basically what we actually got from the top was smear attacks to try and keep things under wraps and undercover. And that is not acceptable.
Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Wellington if he'd like to speak now on behalf of the Labour Group?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Okay, so as was said when we discussed and agreed this at full council in March, the auditor's report had some uncomfortable conclusions and some big challenges we need to address. We all agreed that last time. Nevertheless, we went ahead with the extraordinary meetings of the Audit and HR committees as per the opposition amendment, so members of these committees could contribute to the Head of Paid Services response to the auditor's report. I chaired the HR committee element of this, at which several members of the Audit Committee were also present, and we had a long and wide-ranging discussion on the contents of the report, as well as further discussion in exempt session around the specific case that was highlighted in the auditor's report. These issues were discussed at length, questions were asked, discrepancies noted and grievances aired. While we were not able to come to an agreement on a set of recommendations as a committee, as Councillor Eddy pointed out, there were a lot of us there, a lot of different opinions. A series of points were captured from members of every political party, and these were made available to the Head of Paid Service to aid in his compiling of this report, and they are summarised in the report we have before us. So also, as agreed at the last meeting of full council, I'm pleased that the role of the HR committee in scrutinising severance pay has been strengthened through the changes to its terms of reference. More scrutiny and oversight by councillors of these decisions can only be a good thing. Clearly, the Council needs to be absolutely transparent and accountable in all our decisions relating to senior staff, and I have confidence the process we've gone through will allow us to do that.
Thank you. I would like to ask Councillor Kolob to speak on behalf of the Conservative Group.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. In reading this report, I find that I agree with most of what's in it. The only problem is that I disagree fundamentally with what is not in it, and I ask that we have a vote on this, and if we don't have a vote, I wish my objection to be registered in the strongest possible terms, because I do not wish to be associated with it. And I'll tell you why. I'm sure everybody's read paragraph 10. The Audit Committee agreed 4 specific observations, and I'll concentrate on 2 of them. Should similar circumstances take place again, officers involved would be subject to disciplinary action, and members and the Mayor involved would be subject to a referral to the monitoring officer under the Members' Complaints procedure. My Lord Mayor, if that's the case now, why wasn't it the case then? Why was it not the case? Because we are not talking about rocket science here. We are talking about basic, fundamental business practice where integrity and ethics should be the basis of the actions that are being taken, and there should be transparency and the appropriate documentation. They were all lacking. Paragraph 2 says that all decision-making in relation to the employment of senior officers to have proper documented trail for audit purposes. Now, I can only conclude that that means they weren't there. My Lord Mayor, this is a disgrace, and it is an embarrassment that members on all sides of integrity are supporting, acknowledging that we got this wrong, but pretending that by approving and noting this documentation, we can brush it under the carpet. My Lord Mayor, that's not acceptable. I won't be associated with it. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to ask Councillor Stevens to speak on behalf of the Green Group.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I can take my headphones off when I'm speaking myself. So, to pick up what Mark Weston said in the previous agenda, he talked about the checks and balances aren't there when you have a person with a lot of power vested in them. And one of the checks, one of the duties that was given to Audit Committee a couple of years ago is the ability to investigate value for money. Now, we've all agreed that this was not value for money. But it applies to all spending of the public money, whether it's paying someone to move a barge, whether it's selling an island for development, or whether it's paying off an ex-chief executive. So although we've learnt the specifics to do with HR, I'm not sure we've learnt the more general point. One of the parts of the value for money test is informed decision making. And what I've seen of the evidence is it's been one of the best examples of uninformed and misinformed decision making that is possible to imagine. The Mayor commented back in March, and he was right. He said there was no HR policy for this eventuality. That was the start. The 2 ex-chief monitoring officers' reports show a catalogue, a lot of you have seen them, a catalogue of mistakes. So we've spent too much on this, and we don't want to spend any more. So I'm going to make an offer to Audit Committee when we meet on the 29th. I think I'm going to use the information that I have. I'm going to make this offer to prepare a personal statement based on the evidence that I've seen and any other that comes to light. When it's finished, I'm going to check with Tim, our Chief Monitoring Officer, to see which bits can be public and which bits need to stay exempt. And then, with the agreement of audit, I'll submit that statement. Now, that's going to sort my summer holiday out, which is fantastic, because it means I won't have to fly.
Thank you. I would like to ask Councillor Negus to speak on behalf of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think this is a tidy report. It tells us much better what we probably knew already. It tells us nothing at all about what we don't know, and that's what worries me as it does Councillor Kolob. I sat on HR all of last year when all this was going on, and I also went to the audit all of last year when this went on. I also attended the HR meeting, which was meant to be their conclusion of this sorry episode as well. And I think HR were in denial, despite the fact that both committees had on paper anyway, a Labour majority. There was a lot of discussion around the subject. We did not get to grips on HR with the essentials, and they have still been not referred to in this report. It's the things we don't know that we still don't know. The worrying thing, I think, about this report is that it does hide the fact that we are going to need to know in future to be ready for this to happen again. I'm very much a square peg on audit. It does not fit my mindset. But I have to say that Ollie and Mark and Liz and Clive and I put our backs into this. We had lots and lots of discussions within audit meetings and outside audit meetings trying to get to grips with this, and it was very difficult to get the information that we needed to make a real fist of finding a good answer to this problem. The audit's responsibility in all this, and Ollie will scream when I say this again because I said it before and he screamed then, is that audit's job basically is to define the right size sticking plaster. That's sort of what it does. And this report is actually probably a slightly bigger sticking plaster than audit actually put on it. But it's still only a sticking plaster. It is not systemic. It is not creative. It doesn't embed solutions. It doesn't say what needs to be done to make sure this does not happen again and what we are going to do to keep rigorously ensuring that it does not happen again. It doesn't do that. Ollie, I'm very sorry. I know you'll disagree with me, but it really doesn't do that. It does what it's meant to be doing in audit and just saying, well, here we go. There's a sticking plaster for you. This is not acceptable. There are systemic problems in this council. There's certainly in the legal department, not blaming the present incumbent, and that's come out again in a cabinet report last week when
you have 20 seconds left.
Information wasn't available. So I've got to ask you all, if that's what we are meant to be doing in this council, do you think we've succeeded? Does this report show that we've succeeded? I think not. And if, in the middle of this report, it actually says that the assumptions are that
Can you bring to a close now, please?
The assumption is not made. Who convinced everybody that we had an adequate solution here? It wasn't in the report. It wasn't in the information. We don't have that answer. We're still in the same place we were, and I think there'll be more to be heard about this. Thank you.
This brings to the end of the debate. I would now like to ask the Mayor if he would like to respond. You have 3 minutes. Reserving your remarks. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. The recommendation is to note the actions taken. That concludes agenda item 11.
Happy to second that, Lord Mayor.
So just so I can clarify, you want to have a vote on whether you are accepting this report or rejecting it? Excuse me. Can I remind people that they need to sit in their correct seats in order for their vote to be registered? So, the correct seats. whether you're accepting this report. Hang on a minute. Hang on. What the vote is going to be, or there's been asked of, is that we have a vote whether people accept this vote or not. So as a yes, if voting on whether we accept the vote, the report. No, we're not voting on whether we have a vote.
Could I, my Lord Mayor, on a point of order, please? In the past, when this has happened, if we reject that this report should be noted, which we assume is the recommendation, then we have nothing. And therefore we could, if we wish, move a motion to do something, or it fails. But the first instance is the motion before the House should clearly be, are you prepared to note this report? Once we've dealt with that, we can move on.
So do I have somebody who's going to propose that we have a vote?
Yes. I propose that we...
Lord Mayor, can I say something?
Sorry. I think I already proposed that we had a vote. The vote, I think, should be whether or not we accept the contents of this report.
So is this one here? Right. Okay. Thank you. Can I
say something?
CPR 16.3. Recorded votes. If 4 or more members present at the meeting immediately demand it, the names for and against the motion or amendment or abstracting from voting will be taken down in writing and entered into the minutes. In this instance, we can do it as a recorded vote.
That's not a named vote.
Hang on, that's what we... We have 4 members, so we're going to move to the vote. Okay.
Can somebody please clarify what this vote is about, please? Somebody clarify what this vote is referring to, please, because we are confused. This is the first we've heard of it. Nothing was raised in whips. Can someone please help?
We are holding a vote on whether members are happy to note the actions taken in this agenda item. Is that clear enough for you? Okay. I would like now to move to the vote. Are we ready to vote? Bear with me 2 seconds. I'd like people to move to the vote now, and if they can vote as soon as it's indicated in front of you. Have you got anything? Please tell me you've got something in front of you. Have we got a vote? As soon as you see the lights, please vote. Can we have the results of the vote? This side.
The report is duly noted.
The report is duly noted. Thank you. I would now like to move on to agenda
point of order, Lord
item
Mayor.
12.
Excuse me, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor,
Corporate
point of order.
Parenting Panel,
Point
annual
of order.
report.
Hi, point of order. My vote wasn't registered.
Well, we can note that one. Thank you very much. Thank you.